Hello, my name is Nick Murray, and I'm going to read now from my book Crossings, A Journey Through Borders, and then some poems from my new collection, The Yellow Wheelbarrow. My book Crossings is a reflection on the idea of borders, both literal and metaphorical. Borders between people, between classes, between physical spaces also. It describes crossing borders all around the world in the course of my travels. But the final section is set here in the Welsh Marches, where I have lived for the last 33 years. And this chapter is called, this little section is called Renewal. They have arrived. A scuffling and chattering and squeaking outside the bedroom window confirms that the house martins have completed their migration from sub-Saharan Africa, flying by day with their mouths open to feed on airborne insects, performing their annual migratory marvel. Sweeping in across the valley, they come to rest beneath the eaves of my cottage. They may find there the vestige of last year's nests, built up from gobs of chewed mud that they have spat out from their beaks to form a bulbous hive, its texture that of a thickly knitted woolen beanie. They move quickly and busily, hoping to defeat the sparrows who are known to hijack half-built nests for their own purposes. If the martins can close the entrance of the nest in time, it will prove resistant to that invader. 8 or 9 of these nests, some now untenanted as numbers fall, cling beneath the eaves that face southeast into the valley. The base plinth of the front wall smeared all summer long with thick streaks and splashes of birdlime. So we are woken at dawn by fidgeting and scratching. The martins are at their nest building, and the opportunistic sparrows are pecking at the putty that secures the glass of the window pane in search of an insect. A bright eye sometimes peering curiously in at us. The martin's swooping flight is sometimes completed in one single arc that ends in touchdown at the nest, sometimes arrested in an abrupt last-minute withdrawal, especially if they sense that they are being watched. Banquo, in Shakespeare's Macbeth, drew these birds to the attention of Duncan at Macbeth's castle. This guest of summer, the temple-haunting martlet, does approve by his loved mansionry that the heaven's breath smells wooingly here. No jutty frieze, buttress, nor coign of vantage, but this bird hath made his pendant bed and procreant cradle. Where they most breed and haunt, I have observed, the air is delicate. The air is delicate. It is April, but spring comes later on the high ground of the Welsh Marches. The apple blossom is already out in the orchards of Herefordshire, only a dozen or so miles away. But in Radnorshire our tight buds are only now beginning to unclench on the ragged bramleys. An Ordnance Survey spot height on the map confirms that the martins have chosen their summer hafod at 300 metres above sea level, just short of 1,000 feet. A ragged hawthorn bush on the far side of the lane is visible from my bedroom window. For 25 years I have watched each breaking season the bare winter branches suddenly sprout green leaf. Hedges in the contemporary countryside are rarely allowed to be this untidy. In the late autumn the tractors come with their long slashing flails to shave the hedgerows into neat lines, the sound of their crackling and spitting out of splintered debris filling the still smoke-scented air of a late November afternoon. I have never asked why this stretch of hedges in front of the cottage that turns at a sharp right angle and runs down alongside the steep lane that falls to the village, has been allowed to grow wild. But there it is, performing for me its annual rite of confirmation. And now some poems from my collection, The Yellow Wheelbarrow. The first of these, as I wanted to read, is called Old Llywelyn. Now this is from a medieval Welsh poem. It's not a translation. I've simply taken the story, so to speak, and retold it and made it my own. So I'm afraid, I'm ashamed to admit that I don't speak Welsh, so I couldn't attempt a translation, but it's, let's say, a poem suggested by the idea of this old poet who now speaks. I was the ash with its crown of bright leaf, but the weather destroyed it, forced it aslant. Lightning unmade it, and savage the grief that came to reward my arrogant youth. My songs were renowned in the log-lit long halls before I was stooped, as you see me, and coughing. My praise had rebounded from high palace walls. What my spear had achieved was matter for story. I am old. I am broken. I am hurt by the seasons. Autumn's ripeness rebukes me. Winter's iciness stings. Spring is the worst for the bitterest reasons. For no love now prepares for the fullness of summer. In the heartland of Wales, my heart is now dying. I am hobbled and sick and shunned by the living. See the stag leap, see the horse's mane flying as the daredevils gallop, leaping the hedgerows. Where are the fields where my banner unfurls? Where are the hills unveiling at dawn? Where did they go, the soft-treading girls who slipped from my bed in a rustle of silk? No accident this, no random chance dealing. Fate planned it, declared it the price of my living. My body is dissolving, the world is revealing each day what I'm bound for, the ruin of Llywelyn. Old men are despised for their pantomime weakness, their stumbling antics, mouths ugly and gaping, self-hating rebuke, remorse, but not meekness, for arrogance still breaks out in their insults. Nothing justifies this. Let me warn the unready, the young and the bold, for whom age is a fiction. You think yourselves certain, and your progress so steady, but my fate shall be yours, and your future as hateful. What a crabbed old poet he was. The next poem I want to read is called The Migrant Ship. This originally appeared in a pamphlet at a time when the fate of migrants drowning off islands like Lampedusa in the Mediterranean was very much in our thoughts. The current Home Secretary describes people who care about the asylum seekers as do-gooders. I prefer to think that they are sensitive and wise people who feel for the suffering of others. And this poem is trying to imagine what it must have been like fleeing a war zone, a horrible situation, and your boat wrecked off the coast of Italy. The migrant ship. We were too many, crowded to the rail. As the quay abandoned us, water widened. Don't ask if fear or hope drove us in the first days. Don't ask what thoughts skittered in our heads. Just say we wondered how long our food would last, how we might face the heat in that stinking hold. I spread them on my cloth, a tiny elephant of brass, a ring, a ball of glass, a silver box containing nothing. The boy with the lazy eye each morning carved a notch on a stick with a red tassel. We shunned his tally, having no need of such knowledge as the days drifted us out of reach of time. Each had his own moment when the darkness entered into a personal silence no one else could share. I cannot tell you its smell, bitter taste on the tongue, the longing to retch when the stomach is empty. It was the knowledge of nothing, that the ship's motion, which should take us forward, was infinite regression. I was sleeping when the cries started. I woke to a panic on the hot deck, the engines silent and the crew cursing as the vessel slumped, a sick beast. One by one we dropped to the water, boys in a river pool splashing, but no shore neared, no watchers called a warning. Some sank without striving, others, treading the water, inspected the ocean, its taciturn vastness. When the boats came out from the sleeping island, they handled us harshly, shouting in anger in a strange language. They hauled us up roughly over the harsh side, the ones who were left. I remember the stillness as we entered the harbour, how the gulls cried from the stone quayside. I remember the silence, the fishermen's faces lifted towards us as they sorted their catches. I remember my yearning for the comfort of sleep, where I hoped to forget the need for this journey. I remember the box that I felt for with fingers that knew its hinged lid opened on nothing. Back to mid-Wales now, perhaps, for a poem called Kite, the Red Kite, which when I first came to live in the Welsh Marches was thought to be at risk, and there were attempts to encourage it. Now they are everywhere. It's lovely to see them gliding over the sky here where I live in a cottage. From my front window I can look out and see England in the distance in the shape of Hurgast Ridge, and across the Radnor Valley where the kites love to glide and soar. Kite. A kite and crow contest the sky like flying aces. They do not know the ends foregone, as in all rigged races. These feints and swoops, this mimic violence are just a show. Such desperate loops and air show tricks watched from below confirm the strong at their old game of hammering the weak. Though crowds may throng and bookies thrive, the victor has the sharpest beak. What shall I read next? This poem, The Empty Book, has a little epigraph from the wonderful 17th century poet Thomas Traherne, who of course was born in Hereford and was a vicar briefly in Craden Hill. Absolutely wonderful poem. And the quote from him that the poem takes flight from, if you like, is as follows. An empty book is like an infant's soul in which anything may be written. It is capable of all things, but containeth nothing. I have a mind to fill this with profitable wonders. The empty book. It is a white space where any act of love may be performed, as primped pillows and starched sheets wait to be disordered. Here is spoor of print, marks that tell of something live that has crossed the empty space, leaving its trace like the thin coil of the sandworm on a hard beach as waves recede, disinclined to wipe the fresh inscription. These poems have been rather serious, so let's strike a lighter note now to conclude with. There are a number of poems in this collection which are more playful and funny, I hope. This one is called We Must Avoid Cliché. I used to teach non-fiction writing, so I was regularly telling my students that they should avoid cliché. It's quite a difficult thing to do, in fact, because they always come into our heads whether we like it or not. So these are little funny commentaries on well-known clichés. Colleagues, we are ignoring the elephant in the room. The head of marketing is holding her nose, painted fingernails, a scarlet clamp. The furrowed hide heaves, ears ripple, and that wild trunk sweeps the teacups to the floor. We must reject one-size-fits-all solutions. Come to the long room where bald men tape measures round their necks like stoles, dart at your crotch with a knuckle of chalk. Heart-stopping, brain-stopping. This long-awaited first collection, long touted on Twitter by its friends, its enemies not yet found, still to stir from their long sleep of indifference. Give us our country back. It was here a moment ago, I swear. The empty cupboard had something in it, but I no longer remember what it was. There is an old Chinese proverb, may you live in interesting times. I used to be a reporter on a magazine covering conferences, social work conferences, for example, where people were very fond of this particular phrase about may you live in interesting times. Colleagues, we are living in interesting times. That man in the fourth row, his mouth a cavern open to the salt winds, his eye closed in the condition of the fortunate dead. Let's conclude with a little short one. This is based on a little anecdote from the lives of the saints, a medieval narrative of saints' lives. But this is the life of Saint Brendan. I think I won't tell you what it's going to say, but it's called Island. Brendan's monks have lit a fire where gutted fish brown on whittled sticks, and God is thanked for the air of a small island. There is no hint of what's to come, the slide of embers that tilt and scatter when the whale lifts itself from seeming sleep. Thank you very much.